Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. I hope that everyone had a really awesome, safe New Year's. It's honestly kind of crazy to think about how quickly 2022 went by. 2023 has started off pretty hot for those of us paying attention to the Yu-Gi-Oh card market. Even though Ishizu Tearlament is still obviously the best deck of the current format, everyone seems to be preparing for how the meta is going to look after the deck eventually gets hit on whenever our next ban list is. Of course, between looking at how the OCG is doing and speculating based off of the new support that we're constantly having revealed to us, there are a lot of different potential causes for the various price spikes that we're going to be looking at today. Let's get started. First up, let's take a look at Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous. This card is a level 4 tuner monster from the Fallen of Albaz storyline, and as such it can be summoned for free if you have a Fallen of Albaz on your field or in your graveyard. It does also have a quick effect on the field where you can conduct a fusion summon for a level 8 or higher fusion monster, which is pretty cool, to help this card play around things like Effect Veiler or Infinite Impermanence. Blazing Cartesia has always been kind of a cool card that has had a lot of potential, but has never really seen very much competitive success. I think that at one point this card was used in Tearlament decks alongside Branded in High Spirits in order to make Baron, but aside from that it hasn't seen much usage elsewhere. Well, now we have a couple more support cards for the Fallen of Albaz storyline, and I believe that the consensus is that they make Blazing Cartesia pretty useful, though I haven't looked into the synergy too much myself. At any rate, it probably won't see too much competitive success until after the next ban list comes out. Now, Blazing Cartesia is a relatively new secret rare that just came out in Darkwing Blast, and because it wasn't seeing much competitive play, it was down between that $12 to $15 mark. Now with the new support, however, this card has jumped all the way up to $25 a piece, with a few sold listings even coming in a couple of dollars higher than that. Because the card is so new, we shouldn't expect it to be reprinted until the 2023 Megatons in the second half of this year. At the same time, we should expect this card's price to continue to be volatile as long as we're going to continue getting support for the various Fallen of Albaz themes. Next up, let's talk about the Rite of Aramazir. So unfortunately, the Adventurer token package hasn't performed nearly as well here in the TCG as it did in the OCG. Now, while in the OCG they felt it was necessary to hit the engine in various ways, such as banning Griffin Rider, here the engine not only remains completely untouched, but even at its full power, it isn't seeing very much play. Really, there hasn't been any deck that seems to be able to take advantage of what the cards do. The engine just feels kind of underwhelming compared to what other things you could be running instead. However, we might now be approaching a format where the Adventurer token is stronger, even if it is just because other packages would be getting hit. Because of this, a lot of players are looking at buying up various pieces of the Adventurer token engine. Rite of Aramazir is more noteworthy because it theoretically has fewer printings than Water Enchantress, with the Enchantress coming as an ultimate rare in OTS Tournament Pack 19. As a result, we've seen the ultra rare copies of Rite of Aramazir go from $30 to $35 to now being between $45 and $50, and then with the collector's rares, those are now back up to approximately $110 each. Honestly, I think we might almost be at the point where Adventurer token stuff should get a lower rarity printing so that it's more accessible to the players, but at the same time, I could definitely see it all getting short printed in something to make people chase after it just one more time. Depending on how the next ban list goes, picking up this engine now could either look really horrible or absolutely brilliant. Next up, we have kind of a cool card. It is Scarecrow Tryhard. So I remember when Dimension Force first came out, everyone wanted to pull just Regulus or Beyond the Pendulum. Tryhard was just not a great pull that people kind of wanted to avoid at all costs. Now, however, it's actually starting to trend upwards in price as people are growing more and more fond of the Scarecrow engine. Now, over in the OCG, Scarecrow Tri-Brigade is a somewhat viable Tri-Brigade variant that is seeing a bit of competitive success. Tryhard is a generic Link 3 monster that requires 3 effect monsters to make, but it changes all monsters on the field to defense position, and it's unaffected by the activated effects of defense position monsters, sort of like a mini Baguska type of first effect there. It does have another effect where if it's in the extra monster zone, then you can revive a Scarecrow monster from your graveyard and search for another Scarecrow from your deck, but you're locked into Scarecrow monsters for the rest of the turn. Kind of a crazy effect if you think about it. I'm not too familiar with the Scarecrow stuff. I did look into it a little bit back when Triff won a giant card with it at YCS Niagara, so the deck definitely has a lot of potential. Now, historically, Tryhard has been around the $4 to $6 mark, which is obviously not great for a secret rare from a relatively new core set, but now with all of the recent hype that this card is getting over in the OCG, Tryhard has climbed all the way up to the $16 mark a piece. I don't know if this is actually sustainable, since whether or not Scarecrow Tryhard will actually be good in the upcoming format depends entirely on the extent to which Ishizu Tearlament and other decks get hit on the next ban list here in the CCG. But if you pulled this card and threw it in your bulk because it was a bad secret rare before, now is definitely the time to go ahead and dig them out, have them ready to either play with or sell off. Next, while we're speaking of Tri-Brigades, I want to quickly mention Brigade Fractal. The Tri-Brigade deck has been around for a couple of years now, and while it was never an extremely dominant, overpowered deck, there have been several points where the deck has been a really solid meta choice. The deck can be extremely consistent, and resolving Tri-Brigade Revolt should always be a play that puts you pretty far ahead of your opponent. One of the key consistency cards that I think you guys should be paying attention to right now is Brigade Fractal, a level 4 Beast Warrior monster that lets you discard it to send a level 3 or lower Beast family monster from your deck to the graveyard. This card is usually going to dump Kit, which lets you dump Nerval, which lets you search for a Tri-Brigade monster, and now all of a sudden you have a lot of banished fodder in your graveyard. It's also searchable with Tenny, which I think just went to 3 on one of the last couple of lists. Fractal has only 2 printings, the original as an ultra rare from Phantom Rage, and then the Megaton secret rare reprint, which I think looks like the better version. Right now, either of these copies is going to cost you around $4 to $5 each, which actually seems reasonable given that the 2 printings of the card are over a year old. Given this card's excellent performance history, and the fact that we're expecting this card to see more play after the next ban list, I do think that Fractal is a card to pick up a few extra copies of now, just in case. The next card we have is Swords of Concealing Light. This is a card that has seen a bit of side deck play many years ago. I think notably it was used as an out to Cosmo Dark Destroyer since it flipped it face down without targeting. Swords of Concealing Light basically flips all of your opponent's monsters into face down defense position and stops them from changing battle positions while this card is on the field. Now at the moment, this card is being considered as a side deck option to be used against the Kashtira strategy once they get the next wave of support from Photon Hypernova. At the moment, it seems like more people are choosing to run Book of Eclipse, which can be more versatile as a quick play spell card. This also means it isn't vulnerable to various forms of destruction or back row removal, such as Twin Twisters or Cosmic Cyclone. On the other hand though, Swords of Concealing Light does last for several turns, while Book of Eclipse doesn't. With Book of Eclipse, there's a chance that if you can't get rid of your opponent's monsters, they might flip their monsters back face up and draw a few cards in the process, while that isn't really a risk with Swords of Concealing Light. Because of this, we've seen the holo versions of Swords of Concealing Light go up considerably, mostly because there aren't very many. We have the ultimate rares, which are crazy expensive, with unlimiteds being around $80 a piece, while the first editions are over $140. More reasonably, we have the Yugi's World Ultra Rares, which are around $17 a piece. Aside from that, the only other foil versions are the Star Foil and Mosaic Rare, each of which should be around $2, and then the card also has several common printings as well, which are only about 50 cents each. If you guys don't have a few copies of this card, you might want to grab a couple just in case while they're still cheap. Next, we're looking at a card that feels really random to have to talk about, but it's definitely necessary. We have Monk of the Tenny. This is a Link 1 vanilla monster that you summon by using a non-Link Tenny monster that you control, and it's extremely important because it puts a free body on the field and gets your Tenny monster into the graveyard that you can then hopefully banish right away for an effect, theoretically like an Ashuna or an Adhara. I played Sword Soul for quite a while, and I usually ran 2 copies of Monk, but there was definitely a really solid case for wanting to run 3 wherever possible. Having access to 3 of them in your extra deck was usually pretty nice. Despite the only hit to the Sword Soul deck being Arch Nemesis Protoss, Sword Soul are basically no longer a relevant deck in the current format, as they seem to be completely power crept out of the game by Sprite and Tearlament. However, what is still worth noting is that we saw basically all of the Sword Soul cards get reprinted in Magnificent Mavens, making the entire core extremely cheap and easy to find. On top of that, the Tennys were included in Ghosts from the Past 2 as holos as well, so the entire deck is super easy to find. Basically, people are just needing to pick up the Monks as the last random card. Because of this sudden increase in demand, we're now seeing super rare Monks from OTS Tournament Pack at $5 each, And then we also have the commons from the Megatins and rares from Rising Rampage at $3 to $4 a piece, which is kind of crazy for this random vanilla Link 1 monster. If you guys have them, this is definitely the card that you guys will want to dig up out of the bulk from your 2020 Megatins. And finally, there's one last card for us to take a look at. It is Libramancer Fire. So looking ahead later this month, we have the set Amazing Defenders coming out, introducing the Rescue Ace, Pearly, and Mechanico archetypes to the TCG. While none of these archetypes seem to be game-breaking or too meta-relevant, since they're new archetypes, people will want to try them out, and one deck that has gotten somewhat popular in the online community is the Mechanico Libramancer deck, a deck that combines two consistent, yet seemingly underpowered ritual archetypes together. The deck seems to have some neat plays, and while I don't think it's anything game-breaking, the fact that it can attempt to take advantage of the Libramancer cards, which are pretty strong on paper at the very least, means that players will attempt to put together and test out the strategy. One card that stands out to me is Libramancer Fire, a card that can be special summoned for free by revealing a ritual monster from your hand, and then searching for a Libramancer monster from your deck on summon, a lot of free value without really having to give anything up. Now at the moment, the card is only $4 to $5, even though for a while it was down at $1 or $2 when it looked like the card wasn't doing anything. I don't know how popular this deck is actually going to be, or if it's something that people are going to just like try out for a week or two and then drop fairly quickly, but do keep an eye on the Libramancer cards moving forward, especially the higher rarity ones like Fire and Geek Boy, since the archetype is one that has a ton of potential that players really want to try and test out. Okay guys, that is it for today's episode. We are already off to a strong start here in terms of market movement for early 2023. My goal here is going to be to try to bring you guys more different types of videos than just market watches, so I'll be seeing what kind of things I can come up with moving forward. If you guys do have any recommendations or types of things that you would like to see me do, make sure you leave a comment for me in the comment section down below. If you guys did enjoy the episode, make sure that you slam that thumbs up, and if you haven't, make sure that you guys hit that subscribe button to get all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself here on the channel. And until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.